If you already own a Sony A7 IV or you're eyeing the new A7 V, the camera body is only half the decision. The wrong lens can make even a powerful full-frame system feel ordinary. The right one can turn it into a travel camera, a portrait machine, a wedding tool, or a paid work weapon. I'm about to walk you through 5 lenses I'd buy for the A7 V and A7 IV in 2026. And if you want more guides like this, that cut through the hype and get to what actually matters, subscribe to Alt Buzz Lenses right now. Because number 1 on this list isn't just a recommendation. It's the lens I'd choose first if I were building this kit from absolute zero. At number 5, we have the Sony FE 20-70mm f4G. The first problem every new owner runs into is deceptively simple. Most people don't need their first lens to be exotic. They need one lens that can stay mounted, day after day, without becoming a burden. Most standard zooms start at 24mm. This one starts at 20mm, and that extra sliver of width changes everything in a tight hallway, a cramped cafe, a handheld video where you need just a little more room to breathe. This isn't the fastest lens on this list. It's not going to melt backgrounds into butter, but it's the lens that makes the camera easier to carry, easier to trust, easier to reach for without thinking. Some Sony owners don't need F2.8 drama on day one. They need something they'll actually keep on the body, for travel, for street work, for indoor scenes where wider just wins. It's also, quietly, one of the best video lenses in this entire lineup. That extra width at the top end means less backing into walls when you're filming handheld, less cropping in edit, more of the room actually making it into frame. For creators shooting a mix of stills and video on the same outing, that kind of flexibility saves a bag slot and a lens change nobody wanted to make anyway. There's also something to be said for the psychological effect of a lighter kit. A lens this compact doesn't just sit easier in a bag, it sits easier in your head. You reach for the camera more often when it doesn't feel like a chore to carry, and more days shooting almost always beats a slightly sharper lens gathering dust at home. The trade-off is honest. It's f4, not f2.8, so dark weddings and heavy background separation aren't its job. It's the smart everyday lens, not the dramatic one. Think of it as the lens that gets you through 90% of your shooting days without ever asking you to think twice. But once you want the camera to feel truly full frame in low light, once you want that signature look, an f4 zoom quietly runs out of road. At number 4, we have the Sony FE 35mm f1.4 GM. The second problem shows up the moment the sun goes down. 35mm sits in a strange, useful sweet spot. Wide enough to keep the story in the frame, tight enough to make your subject feel like they matter. It's the focal length that quietly shows up in wedding reels, in street photography, in the kind of indoor documentary work where you can't control the light and don't want to. A lens like this was never really about blur. It's about shooting in the light that's actually there, instead of the light you wish you had. It's about starting to make choices, cage with aperture, with distance, with where you stand, to, and, instead of just zooming to fix a problem. That's the shift this lens creates. There's also a rendering quality here that's hard to describe until you've seen it. Backgrounds don't just blur, they dissolve into something soft and painterly, while the subject stays crisp enough to feel three-dimensional against it. It's the kind of look that makes viewers pause on a frame instead of scrolling past it. For video shooters, this lens quietly earns its keep in another way too. Minimal focus breathing means pulling focus mid-shot doesn't warp the frame, which matters enormously the moment you start mixing photo and video work on the same body. It's the difference between footage that looks intentional and footage that looks like an afterthought. It's not cheap, and it's not a headshot lens. If your subjects are always far away or always tight on a face, this isn't the one. But the moment people become the reason you're holding the camera, 35mm can start to feel just a little too wide. At number 3, we have the Sony FE 85mm f1.4 GM II. 85mm does something almost no other focal length does as cleanly. It flatters faces, it separates subjects from backgrounds, it gives you enough working distance that portraits stop feeling like an interrogation. This is, for a lot of people, the entire reason they bought a full-frame Sony body in the first place. The GM II version specifically brings faster, quieter autofocus than its predecessor, which matters more than it sounds like it should when you're chasing a candid expression at a wedding or trying not to spook a toddler mid-session. It's also noticeably lighter than the older generation, which adds up across a full day of shooting. There's a reason this focal length has survived decades of trends, while other specialty lenses have come and gone. It sits at the exact distance where a face reads as natural rather than distorted, where a background disappears into a wash of color instead of competing for attention. Photographers have been reaching for 85mm since the film era for a reason, and nothing about digital sensors has changed that math. It's not the most flexible lens in this lineup. It won't cover a wedding reception or a travel day. Indoors, it can feel like it's asking for more space than the room has to offer. But when someone's face is the whole point of the frame, this is the lens that understands the assignment. If you're enjoying this, and you want more lens guides that actually explain the why instead of just repeating specs, hit subscribe on AltBuzz Lenses. But portraits are only one job a serious Sony kit has to do. The moment the subject moves further away, or the job turns into an event with 100 people in it, you need reach. At number 2, we have the Sigma 70 to 200mm f2.8 DG Nano-X Sports. The fourth problem is distance, the kind you can't solve by walking closer. This is the lens that lets you stand at the back of the room and still own the shot. Weddings, stage performances, sports, ceremonies, anywhere you can't or shouldn't get physically close, a 70 to 200mm at f2.8 does the compressing and the isolating for you. Choosing Sigma here instead of a first-party option isn't a compromise. It's a statement that serious telephoto work on Sony glass doesn't have to start and end with one brand's badge. The optical stabilization built into this lens also means handheld shots at the long end stay usable in situations where a tripod simply isn't an option. A receiving line, a sideline, a crowded aisle. The sports designation in Sigma's lineup isn't just a label either. It signals reinforced build quality, designed to survive exactly the kind of environments this lens gets used in. Outdoor ceremonies in the heat, all-day event coverage, the occasional bump from a rushing crowd. This is a lens built to be worked, not admired on a shelf. The trade-off is real weight. This isn't a lens you casually toss in a day bag for a walk around the block. If telephoto reach is something you need twice a year, this might be more lens than you need. But if you're building toward paid work, toward covering real events from a real distance, this is where the kit stops being a hobby setup. And if I were building this entire kit from zero, no lenses, empty bag, no room for a wrong first move, I wouldn't start with the telephoto. I wouldn't start with the portrait prime. I'd start with the lens that covers the most ground first. At number 1, we have the Sigma 24 to 70mm f2.8 DG Art. The final problem is the one every new Sony owner eventually asks out loud: what do I actually buy first? This range sits at the center of real photography, wide enough for everyday scenes, long enough for portraits, details, and events, fast enough to handle the light indoors when it matters. Nobody picks a 24 to 70mm because it's thrilling. They pick it because it quietly solves more problems on more days than anything else on this list. For most A7 V and A7 IV owners, this is the lens that makes the camera usable for almost everything, before they ever specialize into anything. The Art Series designation isn't just marketing either. It signals a level of optical correction and build quality that holds up under the kind of daily abuse a working lens actually takes. Bag drops, temperature swings, years of use without the image quality falling apart. That durability matters more once you realize this is likely to be the lens still mounted on your camera long after the others have taken turns in the bag. there's also a quiet confidence that comes from owning a lens like this. You stop overthinking gear choices before a shoot, because you already know the range covers whatever walks through the door. A portrait request, a detail shot, a wide establishing frame. That mental freedom is worth almost as much as the glass itself. It's not as wide as the 20 to 70 mm f4G. It's not as compact as a prime. It won't replace the 85 mm for separation or the 70 to 200 mm for compression. But as a first serious lens, the one lens standing between an expensive body and an actual working kit, nothing else on this list makes more sense for more people. Don't buy the lens with the biggest hype cycle behind it. Buy the lens that fixes the biggest hole in your kit. So tell me, if you owned an A7 IV, or you're about to pick up the A7 V, what would you buy first? The 24 to 70 mm, the 35 mm prime, the 85 mm portrait lens, or the 70 to 200 mm? Drop your answer below. I read every one. A camera body gives you potential. A lens decides what that potential becomes. The A7 V and A7 IV are just the beginning of the story. The lens is where you start writing it. Until the next one, this has been Alt Buzz Lenses. Subscribe, and let's keep building the kit that actually fits the way you shoot.